Loving thy neighbour is easier said than done.
If he was a slug, I would put salt round him so he explodes.
They nearly got me arrested.
That's the type of noise we have to put up with.
When the garden fence marks enemy lines.
Have you got your recorder on?
Yeah, I have.
Good. Really?
Your home life can turn into a living hell.
Give me my dog!
What do you mean, have you? What the hell's the matter with you?
Coming up, having a policeman for a neighbour
It's like being in Big Brother.
turns into a nightmare.
What, me? I say shut up, I'm under arrest.
Knives come out over the garden fence.
I felt a cut to my face.
Stay away from our piece of land.
And an assault by hosepipe.
The warden just hit me straight in the face.
A few miles off the coast of Devon is an idyllic, picturesque town. But a beautiful town doesn't always come with perfect neighbours.
This is Latin for "don't let the bastards get you down." That describes my situation to a T.
Jackie has lived in the area her whole life. And 8 years ago, she moved into a new home with her partner and 2 daughters.
This is a cul-de-sac where I live that we're just turning into. And then my house is just in the corner behind that fence down the walkway. And that's where I used to park. Oh, so tempting to keep going and demolish them.
Jackie's home was a hideaway, set back below the cul-de-sac on steep land, and only reached via a long walkway.
The minute I saw the house, I fell in love with it. I just thought, I love this house. And I was so happy when I got it. And, you know, for ages, I just look out the window thinking, oh my God, how the hell did I get up here?
It's like one of the nicest houses that I've ever lived in, because we've lived in a few, but this is the first ever one that we've actually owned, and it was just really nice.
It wasn't just Jackie and her daughters who would benefit from the move to the family's dream home.
About 15 years ago, I started fostering, and at the moment I'm focusing on just supported living for 16 to 18-year-olds, mainly lads.
Even growing up, it was always a busy house, and whenever I had friends over, we'd always say, "Welcome to the madhouse."
I didn't mind at all. I quite liked it. It was having extra brothers and sisters.
I enjoy my job, and I consider that I always go the extra mile for these children.
The teens who moved in had often come from troubled backgrounds, and Jackie hoped this house could be a more peaceful home.
I get into my car one morning, and there's a note on my car telling me that I can't park here. So I thought, whoa, what on earth is all that about? Because I had paperwork saying that I own these 2 parking spaces.
The note was signed with the house number where Jackie's new neighbours, Janice, and her Detective Chief Inspector husband, Nicholas, lived. Still under the impression she was entitled to the spaces, Jackie continued to park in them.
This is from the estate agent, and it says that there are 2 allocated parking spaces at the top of the deck walkway.
Jackie claims she found more notes on her car. But things only started to make sense to Jackie after an awkward encounter with Janice.
You know, her manner was really quite offish. I thought, crikey, you know, I've only just moved here. And she was really quite, well, frosty with me, shall we say. And we had a bit of a disagreement about it. I bought the house in good faith with 2 parking spaces.
But neighbour Janice had some bad news for Jackie.
She eventually came down with paperwork from the land registry saying that it was hers. Afterwards, I just thought, well, I can't argue with what's on their land registry, so I just never parked there again.
Accepting that the spaces belonged to her neighbour, Jackie now had a problem.
There was 4 of us here with cars, so I parked 2 at the top of the walkway, and then the other 2 were parked on the slope, on the entrance coming in. They've got to realise Jackie has to park somewhere.
Jackie's was the only house in the cul-de-sac with no allocated parking space. And even though parking wasn't allowed anywhere else in the close, for the next few years, Jackie and her family felt they had no other option.
We used to be able to park all the way down here where these plant pots are. And they decided to put the plant pots there because somebody decided that a fire engine might not be able to get down. I think the pots have been there just to make my life difficult.
But late one night, it became clear to Jackie that it might not just be about parking.
And I was walking home with my boyfriend at the time. We'd been to the social club with my foster child. On the way home, the foster boy went on ahead of me.
I was in bed and I heard banging at the door, like hammering at the door. And I was petrified. I didn't want to move because I was like, who was that at the door?
And I could hear all this commotion going on down by my front door.
Jackie's 17-year-old foster son, who we can't name for legal reasons, and neighbour Nicholas were in the middle of a heated exchange.
And then I heard the foster child and I flew out of bed, ran down the stairs. And I ran out the door and I was in my pyjamas and I just couldn't believe what I was seeing. Then I started crying because it was just horrendous.
I came round this corner and I said, what's he done? And he said, he's under arrest. I said, what for? He said, he's under arrest, he's woke my children up. So I've had enough of this. I've had 5 years of this shit.
The longer the scuffle went on, the more concerned Jackie and her daughters became.
These railings weren't here, so there was like about a 13, 15-foot drop down there. So I grabbed him by the arm and I said, get that boy off the walkway. He's not safe and you're not safe.
But one thing was for sure, this was the beginning of a night from hell. Coming up, weed killer takes neighbours to boiling point.
I felt a punch to the right side of my face.
And next door's behaviour brings a man to his knees.
I mean, I've been in tears. He's just a nasty piece of work.
In Devon, Jackie had been fostering troubled teens. But one night, her latest charge had got into a fight with her neighbour, off-duty policeman Nicholas.
He was dragging the foster child there.
He was going, I've had enough of this. I've had 5 years of this shit.
And then the foster child was like, what are you talking about, mate? I've only been here 3 months.
Neighbour Janice claimed the teen had woken and upset her children by shouting threats. She wasn't the only upset neighbour.
It was just bedlam here and all this was in a state of repair. And it was just nightmare. You know, quite a few neighbours out.
And they all started shouting abuse at us. It was just horrendous and I'm crying. Then I ring the police to say come and help in that.
The police arrived on the scene, but what they did next was not what Jackie expected.
And they arrest my young lad. And then this other policeman comes in and starts telling me I'm under arrest. And I was in shock. I went, what, me? He said, yes. I said, what, me? I was so shocked. I thought, well, I'm under arrest. He said, yes, and I got arrested as well.
Jackie and her foster son were arrested on suspicion of assault, occasioning actual bodily harm on a police officer. Jackie's foster son was also arrested for a Section 5 public order offence.
And I was put in a police cell, which is quite awful for somebody that's only ever had a parking ticket.
Couldn't believe it when I knew my mum was locked up. Didn't know what was going to happen because I've never known my mum to ever be locked up or be in trouble.
After spending the night in a police cell, Jackie was released without charge, but was still on police bail.
After 18 hours, I was let out, and I was said to him, is my boy still here? And they said yes. I said, well, I'll wait for him. And they said, no, he's not going home with you.
The 17-year-old had made his home with Jackie for 3 months. But even though he too was released, he wasn't coming back with her.
when we found out that he couldn't stay here no longer because of the incident, and it was actually really sad to see him go.
It definitely wasn't fair. I mean, this was his home and he liked it here. He got on with my girls, he got on with me, and he was a pleasure to look after. All because an off-duty policeman decided to act like the sheriff and put himself on duty.
But what had sparked off this devastating sequence of events?
What I discovered later was that my young man was coming in and he had his earphones on and it was a rap song. So yes, there is a few swear words in a rap song, but he wasn't swearing at anyone. The policeman opens up his bedroom window and shouts out to him, "Shut the f*** up." So my boy goes, "You shut the f*** up." And then I think he said, "Do you know who I am?" And my boy goes, "I don't care if you're the King of England." And he just tootled in.
The details of how the fight started were disputed. Jackie herself was still on bail for assault, but she had no intention of accepting any guilt.
And I said, if you think I'm going to take a caution or a warning, it's not happening. It gets dropped or it goes to court.
After being on bail for 4 months, Jackie was released without charge due to a lack of evidence.
When I found out that the charges of assault were dropped, I felt really pleased and glad about that.
Jackie, however, felt the arrest was unlawful and sued the Chief Constable of Devon and Cornwall Police, who later settled out of court. But relations in the street were still bad.
Me and my daughters used to come down onto the drive and think, oh God, you know, who's going to be about? Is there anything going to happen? Because it's really not a nice way to live, because we just wondered, what on earth have we done to them to not like us so much?
They wouldn't have to wait long to find out. Finding a forever home is always tough. But Chris Barnes is a property investor who buys houses and lets them out. So he decided to move into one of his favourite houses.
It's a nice house, semi-detached, close to York City Centre, which is what I wanted really. It's got a beautiful garden.
Chris already knew his next-door neighbours, 72-year-old Mr Gunn and his wife, having bumped into them on many previous visits.
If I saw Mr Gunn, I knew I'd be stuck for half an hour because we'd both be having a real good chat, got on really well. And I thought, well, it's nice to know that I've got some good neighbours.
But after just 1 year, the friendly mood changed.
I'd walk down the driveway and see them and say hello, and they'd just ignore me. And I remember thinking, well, I don't understand why. What have I done?
Chris ignored his neighbours and got on with sorting out his new home.
I've always looked after the place, and you know, when I've got time to do it, and I always like looking after it. I've always cleaned the drive.
So when his drive kept getting messy, he noticed.
I was getting a lot of leaves on the driveway. I've got a eucalyptus tree in the back garden. It's quite a big tree. And I couldn't understand how they was getting to the driveway when the tree's so far back. You know, put them in the bin, and then 2 days later, they'd be there again. Now, I was thinking, you know, I couldn't understand.
The leaves kept appearing, and Chris was determined to find the cause.
I was at my kitchen sink one day, washing up, and I seen this hand come over the fence and dropping leaves onto my driveway. I couldn't believe it. I thought, oh, it's the guy next door. When I realised, I caught him a few more times, his hand coming over, I thought, well, this is not on, really. I just thought, well, maybe it's just going to be a one-off. But as time went on, it was not going to stop. It just carried on doing it. And so it became very annoying.
The strange behaviour next door continued for the next 2 years. But eventually Chris snapped and reported Mr Gunn to the police.
When the police went round to see him, they said that he was putting the leaves over because the leaves was falling into his garden off my tree. But I mean, it's a eucalyptus tree. It doesn't really shed its leaves, and if it does, it's only, you know, a few.
Chris hoped that the chat with the police would warn his neighbour off. And for a few months, it seemed to have worked.
I was out here having a barbecue with some friends, having a nice time, a few beers, not making much noise really. And then one of the guys decided he was leaving. Opened the front door. The neighbour must have come across and he'd just dumped loads of leaves outside the front door. And I just thought, well, why would he do that? Maybe he's jealous that we're out there having a good time. I just didn't understand it.
When Chris phoned the police this time, the result was an harassment notice for Mr. Gunn.
I thought, thank God, at last, you know, something's actually, you know, because this had been happening for you know, a couple of years by this time. And I thought, well, thank God, you know, he's got to stop now.
The 12-month harassment order seemed to do the trick. And for a year, his driveway was clear of leaves.
As soon as it was up, it just started all over again. He was actually pushing leaves through the gaps in the fence individually, like a leaf, like that big, one by one, and I just couldn't believe it.
Chris felt that Mr. Gunn wasn't just back to his old tricks. Now he was taking things further.
Every time I went out in the car, I'd come back and the gate had been half closed, just pushed across, so that I'd have to get out of the car to open the gate, and it was just like torturous, like these constant niggling things. I was letting it get to me more than it should have done. You know, all my friends would say, oh, just ignore it. If you ignore it, you'll just, you know, go, and I said, I can't ignore it because it's there every day. You know, I'm seeing it every day.
But it wasn't just a mind game. Chris started to fear for his safety.
Started to find nails in my tyres. Maybe I'd only had one in my life of driving, and I got 5 in 1 year. Not like I'm driving on building sites or anything. So the only place for me where these nails was coming from was from next door.
His home was far from the sanctuary he had dreamt of. In Scotland, Christopher and Gail Slavin moved into their dream home in 1997. It was in the small town of Moodysburn near Glasgow.
We moved here because back garden was enclosed, so that was a big reason for moving up here.
It seemed like a perfect home, and the Slavins already knew their next-door neighbours, Maureen McGecky and her son Patrick.
Well, I actually grew up with Patrick, went to the same school as him.
We thought, yeah, we've got good neighbours.
At that time, the back gardens were only separated by a low fence.
We used to sit out the back and we'd have tea and a laugh and a wee gossip, and everything started really well.
But now, a 6-foot barricade divides the two gardens. The reason dates back to a family celebration 10 years ago.
It was a few weeks before my daughter's communion that I had noticed that Maureen was quite strange towards me. So I knocked on Mrs McGecky's door to see what the problem was. I said, Maureen, I said, have I done anything to offend you? And she says, indeed you have. I never got an invitation. Nobody in the family got any invitations. It was all just word by mouth. Just thought that's the way you'd done things.
Maureen did turn up to the ceremony, but she ignored Gail.
That was the way Maureen was. If she didn't like something that you did, she would let you know, by not speaking to you.
Although the communion had caused ill feeling, the families managed to get their relationship back on track. And 2 years later, when Gail's son Paul was due for Holy Communion, she was eager not to make the same mistake again.
I'd actually got an invitation for Maureen, and only Maureen, nobody else got a written invitation. And I thought, well, that'll stop any misunderstanding.
The day of the communion arrived, and after the event, family and friends gathered at the Slavins' home. But there was no sign of Maureen. A few days later, it was obvious there was a problem.
So I was standing here putting the covers out, and Maureen came out the back. And I said, oh, hi Maureen, morning. And she just drew me a dirty look and about turned and went away in.
I learned that it was because I never asked her into the communion personally. After I had gave her an invitation, she was still wanting me to bring her into the house. It was downhill after that. We just never really spoke.
With tensions mounting, it didn't help when Maureen's son Patrick started enjoying a spot of nocturnal gardening.
Noticed Patrick out early hours in the morning, 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, watering the garden, spraying weed killer. As long as he wasn't making noises and waking us up, there wasn't really a problem.
But when the Slavens started noticing their own plants dying, they grew concerned.
We used to have a wee bed of plants down here. They get ruined and the hydrangea get half ruined, so we cut it all back and that's when we put it. But the rest of them we flung out in the bin and we stopped putting stuff in the garden and that was it.
Convinced Patrick McGeckie's late-night weed killing was responsible for their dead flowers, the Slavens reported the incident to the police.
And they said, you need witnesses and evidence. And we thought, oh, no, he'll not do it again, that's it. He'll get fed up, I'll go away.
We spoke to Patrick McGeckie, and he refused to comment on any of the Slavens' allegations. But according to Christopher and Gail, a few nights after they reported the incident to the police, he was at it again.
I heard Gail getting up, went to the window, says, oh, Patrick's out with his weed killer. Grabbed my phone, said this would be a good time to hopefully get some evidence. Went down the stairs. I came to the back door, and Patrick was at the back fence spraying weed killer. I followed him up and down. He looked up, and that's when he noticed me. I was still videoing him.
I've seen you. Ah, but that's criminal damage, wee man. You're in deep shit.
And waves his hands, just doing a wee bit of weed killing at the back there.
Idiot. You stay away from our piece of land. Do you hear me?
Handed the phone to Gail, and as I done this, I felt a punch to the right side of my face.
Coming up, the fight spirals out of control.
I was in shock.
Things go from bad to worse in Devon.
You stupid bitch, you need to learn to drive.
And the battle that started over leaves gets violent.
Got me in the eyes. I couldn't believe it.
Life can be a strain, and we all have our burdens to bear. So we're giving you the chance to turn it around with our competition to win £10,000 tax-free. Let us lighten the load with 10 grand towards anything you like. How about 6 stress-free months knowing your bills are taken care of? Maybe a beach holiday with the family is just what the doctor ordered. Perhaps your car needs some attention and your home some TLC. Whatever your desires, we want to help you achieve them. So to be in with the chance of winning £10,000, text NIGHTMARE to 65515 or post your name and phone number to Nightmare, PO Box 7557, Derby DE10MP. Text costs £1.50 plus 1 message at standard network rate. Lines close at midday on the date shown on screen and 3 days later for postal entries. For rules and winners, go to channel5.com/win. In Devon, Jackie and her teenage foster son had been arrested for assault on their policeman neighbour.
You know, from the night of that incident, everything took a nosedive. You know, I just had a quiet life, and now there's all sorts going on.
But life in Jackie's household was going from bad to worse, and it seemed they were becoming increasingly unpopular in the area.
There was a knock at the door and there was 2 policemen there and I let them in. He got out his pieces of paper and saying that I was doing dangerous driving and scaring the children, which I was not. And they said that there was proof, and I said, how was there proof of me doing dangerous driving?
Jackie's other daughter, Lauren, was also facing accusations.
The police accused me of wheel spinning in the neighbourhood and driving my car at little children, which I wouldn't do that.
If my children were wheel spinning, surely they would have had pictures of tyre marks on the road or something. Nothing.
Lauren and Robin were given warnings for antisocial behaviour. The family knew it wasn't policeman Nicholas making complaints to the police. They had no idea who it was. But it wasn't just the girls who felt they were being targeted.
Yeah, so that's the letter that came. And it was saying antisocial behaviour for me. And I thought, what?
With an arrest for assault and a warning for antisocial behaviour behind her, Jackie's livelihood as a supported lodgings host was now seriously under threat.
It's very important for me to have a clean CRB for the work that I do, and that it shows up that I have no criminal record and that I'm fine for working with these young, vulnerable people that I work with.
And when she received her file from the Criminal Records Bureau, she couldn't believe what she saw.
To my horror, plastered all over my CRB is a level 2 antisocial behaviour, which is nonsense. It goes on about everything about antisocial behaviour being reported by neighbours concerning vehicles used in an antisocial manner and reports of intimidation towards neighbours.
Neighbour Janice told us youths lodging at Jackie's would swear in the street and cause damage late at night. Jackie denies this, and after 6 months, her record was wiped.
I'm now very thankful that my CRB is absolutely clean as a whistle, as it always has been in the past.
Jackie tried to get on with her life as normal, but trouble soon found her when she encountered another of her neighbours.
I was coming home one night, and when I got down here, I started to reverse into my space.
The free space, which was not owned by Jackie, was next to one of her neighbours' cars.
It was a bit tight, and all of a sudden I could hear shouting at me. Whoa, whoa, stopped immediately. You stupid bitch, you need to learn to drive. And he was talking to me here. He said, you nearly hit my car, but I never hit it. You know, yes, I was close, but I never hit it.
Having already been accused of antisocial behaviour, Jackie got straight on the phone.
So I went down and created a log of antisocial behaviour to Devon and Cornwall Police immediately. The next morning, my phone goes really early, and I answer it, and it's a high-ranking policeman saying, oh, hello, Jackie, how are you? Just to let you know that after you made that log last night, they rang in after you to say that you hurt his hip. I went, oh my God, they need to get a life. I said, I didn't hurt anybody's hip. We had plenty of room to run through the gap and to start verbally abusing me. Children's home. So now, because of that, it becomes a road traffic accident. I said, well, it's not a road, there's no traffic. I said, there's been no accident, nobody's gone to hospital, nothing. It got sent off to Crown Hill, and it come back, no further action.
But for Jackie, it seemed like a peaceful life in Devon was looking more and more unlikely. In York, Chris Barnes had faced problems with his neighbour for 5 years. And now he had found nails in his tyres, he feared for his safety. Chris suspected it was his neighbour, Mr. Gunn, but he had no proof.
The police said if I was you, I'd put some CCTV up, especially, you know, with the nails in the tyres, it's quite dangerous.
The first thing that Chris noticed was something being piled up against his fence.
He would store lots of rubbish at the side of his house, so it was opposite my kitchen window, and it was rotting wood and just bags of rubbish, and it just looked awful, unsightly. And so I actually built the fence a little bit higher so it would hide all this rubbish. But he just built the rubbish higher. I just can't win. I can't win here.
Eventually, the weight of Mr. Gunn's rubbish mountain proved too much.
The weight of the bags has shoved the panel out, and these are the bags. They're just really heavy, full of soil, manure, and there's just bits of wire coming through, and it's just a mess. Just beggars belief. It's just disgusting. I feel stressed, and I mean, I've been in tears. Even though to a lot of people it seems maybe quite petty, but this has been going on for so long. I just see the guy as being a nasty piece of work.
Chris was reaching the end of his tether.
Because I was reporting all these incidents and the police was coming around, they gave him another harassment warning lasting 12 months. But this one didn't take any notice of it. He just carried on.
And Mr. Gunn seemed to have come up with a new way to upset his neighbour.
He breaks open a little section of the fence so that he can put his soil and compost there, manure, and just jet washes it through pretty much every day. I'll repair it. Next day, hammer and chisel, breaks it open again. To me, it's a health hazard. You know, it's filthy brown water and it just all cascades onto my driveway. That's what's come out of that hole. It's disgusting. Absolutely disgusting.
But what Chris didn't know was that things were about to go from bad to worse. Near Glasgow, Chris and Gail Slavin had fallen out with their next-door neighbours, the McGeckys, and they suspected Patrick of spraying weed killer onto their plants. Late one night, they were determined to try and catch him in the act.
Stay away from our piece of land. Idiot.
Things, however, quickly got out of hand.
Put my hand on the railing. I felt a punch to the right side of my face. I grabbed the T-shirt, pulled the two A's down onto the slabs. We traded punches. Gail was shouting, "Stop it, somebody's going to get hurt." This time Patrick pushed me down onto the ground here, all the time kicking and punching. I managed to grab his leg. Patrick, into his left jeans pocket, pulled out a knife and started swinging the knife. I felt just above my left eye a nick, left hand. And just at that, I managed to knock the knife out of Patrick's hand, pushed him away. I ran into the house.
That night, Chris was taken to the hospital.
I received 2 injuries, one to my forehead, just above my left eye. I had 5 stitches and a cut between my thumb and my first finger. I was in shock and didn't expect things to turn out the way they did. Patrick turning aggressive and nasty.
Patrick McGecky was arrested. He claimed he was acting in self-defence and that Christopher had thrown the first punch. The weed-killing charges were dropped, but he was tried for serious assault. However, when the verdict was read, the Slavins were in for a shock.
The verdict came back, not guilty. Numb. There's no words that can describe it.
The court was satisfied Patrick McGecky had acted in self-defence. 2 months after the trial, Chris had visitors.
And it was 2 police officers said there'd been an allegation that you've threatened Patrick McGecky, but there was no witnesses, so we'll not be proceeding any further with the allegation, just make you aware of it. I hadn't done anything at all. As far as I was concerned, that's the end of the matter.
It wasn't. A few days later, the police returned.
A witness had come forward to say that they had witnessed me threatening Patrick McGecky on the Saturday. Later found out this witness was his mother.
Patrick McGecky had accused Christopher of making abusive threats to him in the back garden, and Chris was charged with breach of the peace. But he wasn't the only Slavin to get on the wrong side of the law.
I was out hoovering out my car, and Mrs McGecky came out from her house and walked down, and I said, "Liar." And she turned round and gave me nothing but verbal abuse. I just laughed at her.
But another neighbour who overheard the exchange has an entirely different version of events. He's agreed to speak, although he's asked us to conceal his identity.
Gail started it, bawling and shouting, swearing. And the next thing, Gail, I think she seen me in the corner of her eye at the back of her, and she started to calm down a bit and started saying things like, "Mrs McGeechy, just go away, you're just making a fool of yourself, you know, blah, blah, blah." She started turning the tables as if Mrs McGeechy had been the aggressor. That's how cunning she is, you know.
Gail denies this happened, but the police were called and she was charged with threatening and abusive behaviour.
We've been made into the bad ones, I think, haven't we?
Yeah, we are.
Gail agreed to pay a fine in order to avoid trial. Christopher was offered a similar deal for his alleged offence.
It would mean I wouldn't go to court, I wouldn't go any further, but I would be accepting guilt. So I wrote back and says, no, I'm not prepared to. I've never done anything.
Convinced of his innocence, Christopher Slavin went to court and was tried for threatening behaviour towards Patrick McGeechy.
When the Justice of the Peace came back and found me guilty, I was again flabbergasted. I couldn't believe the outcome of it.
Christopher Slavin was given a 6-month deferred sentence and a criminal record. What was once a shared doorstep and a home to happy memories is now divided by a 6-foot fence, and relations between the former friends are in tatters.
If we meet McGeechy's in the street, they can't look our way.
The McGeechys declined to be part of this film, but said the outcome of the various court proceedings against the Slavins speak for themselves.
I can't actually see any good coming out of it now. It's went on far too long and the wounds are deep.
Coming up, things get violent in York.
Couldn't believe it. I was in a bit of a shock, really.
And in Devon, the neighbourhood falls under 24-hour surveillance.
I always think everything's to do with me because I'm paranoid with all of them now.
And don't forget, there's still time to enter our competition to win £10,000. You could pay off your bills for 6 months, take a holiday with the family, or refresh your home. For your chance to win 10 grand, text Nightmare to 65515 or post your name and phone number to Nightmare, PO Box 7557, Derby DE10NP. For rules and winners, go to channel5.com/win. And good luck. For 5 years, Chris Barnes had been harassed by his neighbour, Mr. Gunn. But when he decided to confront him about the waste he had been hosing onto his driveway, things soon came to a head.
Opened the front door, so I came just outside the front door. I just asked Mr. Gunn if he'd stop washing the filthy water thrown to my driveway. He just started mouthing off at me. Then he lifted the hosepipe up, pointed it at me. The water just hit me straight in the face, got me in the eyes. Couldn't believe it. I was in a bit of a shock, really, because I thought, well, the guy's getting aggressive now. You know, it was almost like he'd taken it to another level, really.
The police came and arrested Mr. Gunn. He was charged with assault by beating, and a date was set for a hearing.
I was glad that something was happening. So I went to court and I gave my statement of what happened, and then Mr. Gunn gave his statement, and then he was, he was found guilty.
Mr. Gunn was convicted and fined £500 and was instructed not to go near Mr. Barnes for 12 months or he would be arrested. Chris hoped his nightmare was at an end.
I thought it would help, to be honest. I thought, that's got to curb it, surely. No, just carried on.
We asked Mr. Gunn for his comments, but we have so far not received a response. With no apparent end to his neighbour's harassment, Chris is faced with an uncertain future.
Saved up, worked hard to buy this house, and I've got somebody living next door to me that's damaging and spoiling my property. And why should he be allowed to carry on like that? Mr. Gunn is, for me, he's quite an evil character. You know, he's upset me a lot of times, and there's just no reason for it. He's just a nasty piece of work. I just don't like the guy. Don't like him at all.
When foster carer Jackie moved into her picturesque home in Devon, she couldn't have predicted the nightmare that followed.
Now it seems like I'm public enemy number one.
And 8 years on, Jackie feels like there is no escaping it.
If you look just up there, there's a camera up there, and that camera covers anybody walking down this walkway that leads to my house. So it made me feel quite intimidated, because I thought, oh my God, you know, I'm being watched. It's like being in Big Brother.
And it wasn't long before Jackie's daughter Lauren made an appearance on a neighbour's CCTV camera.
I was coming up the walkway from my house and my boyfriend was waiting in the car, and I looked up at the window to see a shadow, like a person, and I said, oh look, they're up there again.
But just a few days later, her gesture would return to haunt her.
The police sent a letter to say come into the station, and that I'd been harassing the neighbours by doing horrible gestures like sticking my fingers up. But I wasn't.
The CCTV was eventually found to be inconclusive, and the police took no action.
It's just over the top, really, the amount of CCTV camera that's there for that small space.
But it would appear that it wasn't just the CCTV keeping watch.
It's just about to leave now, and he's just coming up. There he is, so I don't know why he's been here or what.
Do you think that's to do with you?
I always think everything's to do with me because I'm paranoid with all of them now. But hopefully it's not.
Jackie's paranoia aside, she still had nowhere to park, and the Residents' Association had now decided to make the parking situation even clearer.
And now the latest thing that I've got, you can see these two bollards are now cemented into the ground, so I can't even park there anyway.
Jackie was told the posts were to prevent subsidence.
Everybody has a parking space here, but I don't. They all have parking.
Whatever the reason for the posts, Jackie wasn't convinced. Soon the focus was on her again.
I actually did get a letter from the management company saying that I was running a business and I must stop immediately. And it just wasn't fair. I felt like they were being discriminated against.
Jackie has now had to stop housing young people under supported lodgings in her own home.
My son says, why don't you leave all that negativity, Mother, and get on with your life? But I thought, well, they're pushing me out of my home and I actually do love it here. I would just like them to just stop and think, what has Jackie actually ever done to you? What have I done to you? I just want to get on with my life.
Have you got a nightmare neighbour story? Get in touch at channel5.com/nightmare neighbour. Next time, a pensioner gets violent.
If he was a slug, I would put salt round him so he explodes.
A veteran tackles the police next door.
I picked up this and swung.
And the nightmare building extension.
The gap between our property and his is like inches.
Now, if you love CSI, you'll know that love can be crime's catalyst. Tonight from 10, our CSI special, till death do us part. Before that, the O.J. Simpson murder case. What happened to his ex in those final days? New autopsy is next.